Welcome to Power Politics, where we prepare you for your next political conversation. I'm Jeronimo Cortina, political science professor at the University of Houston.
And I'm Brandon Rottinghaus, also a political science professor here at the University of Houston. Thanks for hanging out with us and talking politics. A big week. Lots of people are quitting. Lots of people are running. And maybe the government will shut down. The usual kind of chaos that surrounds the maelstrom of September, right? So Here we are. Let's start with actually big news coming out of Harris County, and that's that Judge Lina Hidalgo has decided not to run for re-election. It probably was something she telegraphed long ago by, not raising any money and being kind of generally combative with her colleagues. So perhaps it was sort of writing on the wall for a long time, but it obviously has implications for not just the kind of budget for Harris County, which is being debated literally almost as we're talking, but also just kind of her legacy as county judge. So let's talk about that first. Like, what is her legacy as county judge after 2 terms in office and, a lot of political controversy?
Well, but I think on the one hand, we have baptism by fire. Just like, welcome and suddenly...
You're 27, like
exactly.
Welcome to, kind of the fireball.
Well, the fireball, but also all natural disasters, right? Not only natural disasters, but also a bunch of different problems in terms of politics with Austin, internal politics with former Mayor Sylvester Turner, now with Meyer. So that propel you to be like running immediately. Also, and kudos to her, her issues with mental health and disclosing them pretty open, which is I think a very courageous step that many other politicians from different ideological stances have taken. So that's also very good. And yes, as you say, very combative in terms. But I think that what it struck to me, obviously in the last couple of weeks and months, is that is exactly what is happening with the Democratic Party, right? It's Lina Hidalgo, very progressive, trying to assert a different way of doing policy in comparison to what we consider, for example, more moderate Democrats like the rest of the court.
Yeah, that's a great point. And, that kind of friction has been on display the last year plus, and we're certainly seeing it play out in terms of budget fights. But I think her real legacy here, as you said, is a number of things. The first is that it turned the role of the Harris County judge from being an administrator to being an activist. So most people didn't realize who their county judge was or what the county judge did before Lina Hidalgo came around. And although Judge Emmett did a great job in lots of different ways, especially through natural disasters, people simply didn't really know what he was doing all day. And Commissioner's Court was kind of this sort of unknown entity. But this all changed with her election, and it clearly pushed it into a much more progressive direction. With her election, the sort of balance of power shifted to the Democrats, and although it hasn't been a kind of natural progression in terms of the liberalness of the policies, there's certainly been a movement in that direction. So that definitely is a big movement. But also, it kind of puts progressive politics on full display. Now, that obviously invites a lot of controversy, as it did, but it certainly meant that, she was this new kind of figure that was going to be the future of the Democratic Party. Maybe she won't be, but sort of her kind of likeness will be, right? Kind of younger, more progressive, right? Often like Latino. And so that means that you're seeing a kind of real change in that perspective. So that, I think, is one of the biggest types things that we're seeing from sort of her activities, but they were many. The policy changes were pretty big, right? Changes to the jail, controversies over COVID-19 and mask mandates, right? She got in kind of, some political hot water for all those things. So this was definitely, I think a really sort of impressive moment for Democratic Party politics, but also for kind of progressive politics in Harris County. Now, obviously, I think too, kind of efforts to try to improve civic engagement and to try to expand the vote were stopped by the state and probably exaggerated some of the state versus local conflict that we see. And it's not her fault, of course, but just that dimension was really magnified by the way that the state viewed Harris County and her position in it. So there's a lot of things there that made it, much more sort of controversial, right? I guess the question here is, will her legacy last beyond her moment? Will we see the next set of Democratic leaders follow? Will we see a reaction to this from Republican officials who may win? So what's to come?
Well, it's hard to say because, the pool that we have for the potential contenders, we have former Houston Mayor Anise Parker. We have City Council member Leticia Plummer. We also have Sheila Jackson's Lee daughter that wants to run, Erica Lee Carter. And then on the other hand, we have Marty Langton, that is the president of the Houston Firefighters Union. So right now, as just like that, the only person that you might say, well, it's embodying, for example, Hidalgo's progressiveness in terms of politics might be Lee Carter, right? Yeah. Besides that, might be a little bit more still progressive, but not representing that new wave within the Democratic Party.
Yeah, like you won't see the fight about the kind of penny tax for childcare. That's not going to be a fight they'll probably have. And if they do have that fight, it'll be kind of behind the scenes.
Right.
Yeah, that's right. I think part of her combativeness meant that she really cared about these issues. Yeah. And the Democratic Party does in general, but pushing that really far too fast means that you're going to outpace your colleagues, and that's what happened on Commissioner's Court. So we're certainly seeing that friction. But I think this is potentially going to be a very competitive race. And with Marty Langton in that, Alicia Dutt, who's running as well, who's the mayor of Piney Point, Orlando Sanchez, right, former treasurer of Harris County. There's certainly a lot of options for Republicans who want to see this change, and this is, potentially their moment. So the fact that Hidalgo's had such close elections certainly indicative of the fact that this is, a kind of a big purple county. We are used to seeing, basically urban Texas be very blue, but in this case, Harris County is pretty purple. So
and it's going to be, if we're going to do 2018 2.0 plus 2016, 2026.
Yeah.
And it might.
It might be,
so we might get another big surprise.
It could be, luck of the draw for Democrats that they get this at the point where, they're getting kind of national headwinds, and otherwise Republicans would do pretty well. But the issues really matter here, right? If it's about kind of, increasing taxes, if it's about crime, these are issues Republicans can win on, and the right candidate in the right moment can really mean something for them. So we'll continue to watch as this goes, because obviously it matters a lot for Harris County. But Judge Hidalgo is not the only person who's sort of not going to be around again. We're also seeing two additional members of Congress from Texas decide not to run. Morgan Luttrell, who's a congressman from the 8th District, a former Navy SEAL, known for his advocacy on veterans issues, and Michael McCaul, who's been in Congress for a long time, longer than most of our students have been alive at this point. Since 2004, he was influential, right? Chair of House Foreign Affairs and Homeland Security, both calling it quits. What's going on? Why are people not running again?
I think that might be, I don't know.
Right.
The reasons that, for example, Congressman McCaul has given is like, I want another challenge. I want to serve Texas and his constituents differently, not necessarily in Congress. His district was redistricted from going to super secure Republican district to just
moderately secure.
I would say more than moderate, right? Like not super.
It's still +5 Trump, and it was a +10, so he's probably in the mix to win. But it's still different than it was. Right. And that means you're going to have to campaign differently. And
exactly.
Maybe you just don't have the fire in the belly anymore, right? But members don't run for lots of reasons, right? Including kind of potential loss of seniority, right? Luttrell probably sees that it's going to just be a long time for him to kind of work his way up the ranks, and, it has sort of, other things he probably wants to do. But they're not alone. Of the 25 Republicans in the House currently, only 4 of them have been in office before Trump's first term. Carter, Weber, Williams, and Babin. And so we're seeing a real drain in terms of members. Yeah. And that means that Texas's clout is sort of, minimized. And you're also talking about possibly Joaquin Castro running statewide. Mark Veasley has been districted out of his district in Fort Worth. Chip Roy is out running for attorney general. Wesley Hunt might run for Senate. We'll see. John Cornyn's hoping, you stay in D.C. We don't need you around here. People like Vicente Gonzalez is now in a Trump 10 district. So that's a tough road for him. So
Oh,
we
yeah.
could see like basically a hollowing out of this that we haven't seen since the 2016, 2017 kind of window where you had like, almost 10 members decide to not run
Right.
for office. It's common to see people not run, especially after redistricting, right? So on average, about 11 Democrats and 12 Republicans retire from the House every 2 years. But this year, there's a lot more people. And at this point, it's 10 Democrats and 17 Republicans not running. So there's a real drop, not just for Texas, but also kind of for every state
Right.
in terms of those members. I mean, part of it is what you're describing. It's, kind of hard to stay in office. Being a member is now not what it used to be. A lot of it is not policy making and deal making. It's about kind of how many likes can I get on my bizarre social media post where I, lambast my, opposition party. That probably wears on you after a while. And obviously, too, the nature of politics in D.C. is very different. Donald Trump changed the way that politics functions, and it's not for everybody. So there's a lot of things here that probably mean that members are just sort of
I
had
agree.
it.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, let's talk about some more positive news, which is that we're seeing people run for office.
Right.
Now, the good news, of course, people leaving means you're going to have kind of new opportunities for people to run.
Correct.
And in this case, we're seeing one at the statewide level. Andrew White, who's the governor, son of former Governor Mark White, is decided to run for office as the governor of Texas. What do you make of this?
Basically, his announcement, he said that it's time for change, and he's just preparing and I guess anticipating a run that is going to be very difficult. He lost the Democratic primary against Lupe Valdez
in 18.
In 18. 26, again, might be a good year for Democrats, given the polarization that we experience and, the fact that we know that every midterm election, the party of the president tends to lose.
Yeah. And the reaction to the incumbent party is a big ideological swing for the opposition party. So part of the reason Valdez won by very little bit was that you saw this kind of liberal swing, and Mark White was a conservative Democrat by most accounts, sort of like his father, although the issues are very different. So you can easily see a situation where this actually ends up hurting him, so assuming there's no one else running, right? That in a liberal swing year for the primary, that there's a chance that he ends up getting hurt because of that. But I actually think he's the kind of Democrat who can win this seat. The specifics we can talk about in a minute, but at least from where things were in 2018, he was against the death penalty. He wanted more education funding. He wanted additional Medicaid funding. He says that he's pro-life, but wants to have women's access for abortion care. He was tough on criminal justice issues, but opposing recreational marijuana. And so there's some moments there where, he definitely could appeal to the moderates in the party and maybe beyond that. But I guess
also the moderates on the Republican side, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think that, we know, and we have said many times, Governor Abbott, as a politician, is very smart.
Yes.
He has a lot of money, right? But we're going to be entering a 2026 election season with a very contentious senatorial primary. Yeah. As you said, we don't know if Wesley Hunt is going to enter or not, but it's going to be very contentious.
Yeah.
Then we know everything that has happened with the ideological polarization of state politics. That, as we have said, reflect what's going on in Washington, almost carbon copy. So maybe he's going to be positional also if he maintains that, I would say, center left, center right, kind of middle.
Yeah.
To woo, right?
Put that on a bumper sticker, right? Center right, center middle. Yeah.
Woo, some Republicans, saying come here, come here.
Yeah, like a kind of siren song of support for kind of a moderate way of going about things. I think that's useful.
Like
and
common sense, right?
Yeah.
Just common sense type of politics.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
And I think that there is a kind of moment now where voters are willing to make a change, right? If you look at the kind of right track, wrong track polling for Texas, like we've seen, the Texas Politics Project do for a long time, they have shown that the people who think that Texas is on the wrong track is sort of at an all-time high.
Yeah.
And so that means that potentially there's time for a change, sort of as his kind of moment mentioned. But, he's going to have to raise millions, tens of millions of dollars. Greg Abbott has almost $90
Yeah,
million,
that's a lot of money.
Geronimo. That's an insane amount of money.
Right. Or and we have to wait and see if Matthew McConaughey decides to.
McConaughey could raise like $10 and still like get within 5 points of Abbott. And I think that's part of the problem is that Abbott is so well entrenched here, right? And his vulnerabilities are a lot lower, I think, than other statewide officials. So he's in a much better position.
Absolutely.
And even if he wasn't, $90 million can get you pretty far down the road.
Yeah, it's
so
a
like
lot of money.
to prospect of raising for Andrew White, like independent of the Senate race, which will suck a lot of the money out of the Democratic Party and its, pockets, means that, it's going to be $60 million, $70 million to raise to be able to compete against Greg Abbott. And that would make even LBJ shudder, right? So much happening here. But I guess my question to you is, nothing against Andrew White, but is this the best Democrats can do? Like, he's not an elected person. He already ran and lost. His positioning is a little awkward inside the Democratic Party. What does this mean for the Democratic Party? Does this mean that the bench is depleted and that no one else wants to run? There are rumors that Jeannie Hinojosa will jump in. She registered somebody registered domains in her name, such that, there could be kind of a future kind of site for landing people to find, her campaign for governor. But I don't know if this is sort of a good sign for the party or not, given that a lot of the big hitters have decided to sort of take a seat.
Well, I mean, until they can resolve some of the internal issues and decide who are we going to support, then I think they can move on. I mean, but again, you have Joaquin Castro maybe thinking like, I should run for this or I should run for that. Beto O'Rourke, whether he decides, I'm going to do Senate or now governor. Like, which one is it, right? And it's the eternal candidate, so on and so forth. And not in a bad way, right? But he has a significant name recognition. Is he willing to fine-tune some of the message? Can you outdo what you did before in terms of that cost you significant political capital, right? So
it's tough. No, it is. I think the fact that Talarico got in the Senate race means that no one else is getting in. That race is set. So governor is still an open question. Maybe now that Mark White's jumping in, it's a signal that like no one else is going to do it. It's time to really make that move, and no one else has done it. So
March are the primaries.
Exactly. And the thing is that the polling suggests that Democrats want somebody who's not these people, right? They want O'Rourke, as you mentioned. They want Jasmine Crockett, and they might not get it. And so Democrats could be in a hole where they look at the lay of the land and say, well, this is sort of as we've got. And it doesn't mean that they won't have good messages and won't be able to compete a little, but, this is not exactly what the Democratic Party wants.
Right.
But let's talk about the Democratic Party itself. They have decided that they are going to essentially ask the voters for permission to okay their desired move to Dallas. So I guess they're going to be Cowboys fans now, abandoning Austin. What's the implications of this?
Well, I mean, it's not only Dallas. They're open other, the other southern offices that they have. They have obviously in Houston, now Dallas. They're going to keep Austin as whatever they keep over there. They're opening field offices in El Paso, Eagle Pass, El Paso del Águila. So I think just looking at a perspective from pure population growth, pure marketing, where your voters are, I think smart.
Plus, you've got Tarrant County close by, which is another big kind of urban battleground that they're hoping to kind of plant the flag in and transition more clearly to the Democratic side. Yeah, I mean, I think there's some advantages to it. Logistical issues are so solved because it's got a big airport and you can fly in and out of there. So there's probably some positive things here. And I guess, it signals to me that they want to make a move and they want to make some changes. And that's probably good because whatever they're doing isn't working really well, right? I mean, there's been, 150 consecutive elections where they've lost, so something different probably is smart here, and maybe this is the thing they need to shake it up.
And every single office is going to have like major operations, right? So to me, is where our voters are and what do we need to get them out to vote? Because as we have seen before in these major metropolitan areas, yes, it tend to be Democratic leaning, but turnout is not what you need them to be.
So true. You and I have done academic work on this subject, and it's really hard to get people to vote who are not inclined to do so. And that's a major effort that takes money and investment of time, and having it done in a place where you're not doing as well is probably pretty smart. So I think that's good in a way. I think that's a positive sign. So that operational growth could be potentially positive. But while the Democrats are opening things, the Republicans are hoping to close things. They have sued the Texas Secretary of State with the effort to try to get their primaries closed. So states differ on terms of whether they have open primaries or closed primaries. A closed primary is sort of only members of that party can vote. An open primary is what we have now, which is that anybody can vote. So this is kind of something that they had talked about doing. They didn't get it done in the legislative session, so they're going to sue essentially to try to force this issue. But there are some real implications to this. The fact that the case that the Republicans want to make is that you've got Democrats meddling in our outcomes, right, in our elections. It's not totally true, right? The percentage of people who are like voting in other parties' primaries is really low, like 4% low. And so it's not a lot. But Republicans say even that small number can make some big differences. So, for instance, in the primary that involved Dade Phelan, the Speaker of the House at the time, this last cycle, he only won by a couple hundred votes. And, you know, if you've got a few hundred Democratic votes that otherwise in that spot would have maybe changed the outcome. So there's at least on occasion this sort of outcome. But there are real implications to this. That is, especially that people who are considered independent tend to be, you know, right-leaning Republicans. They're going to be people who Republicans want to have in their primary, right? But also you have, you know, folks like who are younger, who are less politically attached. Asian Americans are often shown to be more independent, so they don't have a party affiliation per se. So you're kind of closing the primary to them, really reducing turnout potentially, as the scholarship says. So is this a good idea for them or a bad idea?
Well, I don't think it's a great idea because, as you see, and party identification in Texas and across the nation is the number of independents keeps increasing and increasing. That doesn't mean that they do not have any political leanings, right? But as you said, is you are reducing your customer market share immediately, right? And that can have important implications and give an advantage, for example, to Democrats and say, well, they don't want you, I want you, and move the needle one way or the other. And the other thing is, obviously, in perspective of the Secretary of State, is like things are already rolling. No,
that's a great point.
We already have them.
Logistically, I have no faith that the state can pull this off. Right, the amount of investment in the infrastructure to like register people and then to like actually have that be checked at the polling place is just beyond, I think, what's capable.
Also, the history of these state in terms of voter registration is no party affiliation, right?
Right.
So,
when do you become a member of the party at registration? Do you have to pay dues that somebody has to track? Is it just voting in the primary that they lock you in for 2 years?
But just registering as a Republican or as a Democrat, I think a lot of people are going to be uncomfortable saying like, I want to be here or I want to be there.
And it's temporary. Usually most states have it as a kind of 2-year window, but still, you're right. People don't want to have that. I'll give you an also, and that's that states that have closed primaries also have same-day registration. So places like Wyoming, right? You can register and have to register in a party if you want to vote in that party, but you also means you can do it that day. So Texas does not like that. Republicans have been against that. So this is just a conundrum, I think, from a like administrative point of view. We'll see. Well, I don't know how to phrase this, but we've got more bad news, and that's that we might be headed towards a government shutdown. DC can't agree on what to do in terms of budget funding. Republicans have put forward a plan that essentially is a clean continuing resolution that has no riders. It's just, let's just continue the budget through November. Democrats have said, you know, we're not going to play ball. We're going to fight for the rollback of the Medicaid cuts that happened in the big, beautiful bill. Who's going to come out ahead on this? Are we having a government shutdown or not?
I mean, maybe. If Democrats really do what they're saying right now.
I think the political push is real. Like, there's a certain segment of the Democratic Party that says they didn't fight hard enough last time. A lot of Senate Democrats caved, and people are mad. They want to push back, and this is at least one way to do it. So the Democrats are saying, look, if you want to exclude us, you want to have a clean budget, good luck, right? This is what Brian Schatz from Hawaii says. Do you think that's going to work out?
I mean, it might work out this time. Minority Leader Schumer has indicated that if Republicans were to use the nuclear option, which they did that they were not going to play ball eventually, and that they had to be very careful. Now they have done it.
Yeah.
They called the bluff. So we'll see if then Schumer is not going to cave and say, like, well, this is for, maintaining these services or anything like that. Or use the other positions that sometimes Republicans have used.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, you're in power. We're the minority party. You want to do something?
Yeah. Good
you
luck.
do it.
We'll meet you
like,
there.
Yeah, we're not going to
Maybe.
do it.
Yeah, and Jeffers has his own problems of keeping the caucus together, right? Here, the Texas connection is that people like Henry Cuellar, who are, moderate Democrats and maybe want to see government funded and don't want to have to fight that battle on the ground, might be among a few people like, Jared Golden from Maine and companies would say, like, we're not going to side with the Democrats on this. And they side with Republicans who need every vote they can get to make this happen. But if they have Democratic votes, then at least in the House, they'll be able to move forward.
Yeah.
So interesting. So this is a certain obvious sort of conundrum that the state faces. And it's one of a package of a bunch of different problems that is going to be on the table. Let's do a quick Senate roundup. So this week, James Talarico says he is not taking instruction from national Democrats. Colin Allred has got a CDC endorsement. Does this matter?
No. Next.
Good enough. Yeah, there you go.
No, obviously it matters.
Yeah,
but
they're building coalitions.
Exactly.
And the distance from the National Democratic Party is really important for
absolutely.
both. And Allred knows this, so does Talarico.
Yes, it is very important. It's a signaling game, but that's a game that we're going to analyze as Monday quarterbacks next week. I'm Jeronimo Cortina.
And I'm Brandon Rottinghaus. The conversation keeps off next week.